seatbelt on.
Hello, everybody. My name's Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hello, guys. How are you today?
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer tips, insights, ideas, and examples for how small, emerging, and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can build their business. Everything from determining if you're ready to grow, where to start, how to prove it online, how to go about securing distribution at a national retailer, driving your business through to the end consumer, and how to go about finding an investor if that's what you're ready for. The bottom line is we would love to help you be successful by highlighting the many important aspects of this journey to establishing and growing your brand. Tracy and I have been doing this a long time. We've made a lot of mistakes. We've done a few good things, and we would love to help you be successful. So please follow our podcast, Road the Number 2 Retail, on iTunes or Spotify. Leave us a review. Consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague that may benefit from the content. Thanks. Tracy?
So Bruce and I have been in CPG commercial operations for 30 plus years. What we mean by commercial operation is sales, marketing, trade marketing, product development, managing distributors, managing brokers, outsourcing advertising agencies, hiring them, working with them. Also, we have worked in divestitures, acquisitions. So as Bruce mentioned, we've done a lot of things. And we're just excited to share our episode with you today. Also, from time to time on our episodes, we have colleagues and friends from the CPG industry that we invite. And the purpose there is really for them to share their insights and experiences with our audience as well. Bruce?
Thanks, Tracy. So before we jump into today's show, let's talk about our sponsor, Media Manager Marketplace. So you've heard Tracy and I say many times on this program that getting on the shelf isn't the victory. It's getting the product off the shelves and out the door in the consumer shopping cart that's going to make your product take root and grow. The best way to accomplish this is with advertising and marketing, and that's why we're so happy to have Media Manager Marketplace as one of the cornerstone sponsors of the Road to Retail. Media Manager Marketplace specializes in helping brands maximize the reach and impact of their advertising dollars by making sure that your precious marketing budget is spent on the right media mix to match your brand's demographics. And if you think it's going to cost you millions of dollars to create a national TV or radio marketing campaign, then you need to think again. Media Manager Marketplace can get your campaign started for far less than you might imagine. Their expertise in using the right blend of advertising to help drive demand for your product could be the difference between a 90-day trial and a nationwide rollout of your brand. Buck Robinson, the president of Media Manager Marketplace and an industry veteran of over 30 years, will personally review your product and offer his free assessment. Email him directly at buck@themediamgr.com. That's Buck like a dollar bill at themediamgr.com. Tracy, who do we have here today?
Thanks, Bruce. So I'm glad to introduce our guest today, Wade Yenny. Wade, we just so appreciate you being on as a part of our podcast today. And Wade, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about you and your background and why it's going to be just a great day here at Road to Retail.
Well, thanks, Tracy, and thanks, Bruce. It's good to be here. Let's hope for a great day. That's we're setting the bar kind of high to start with, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, my name is Wade Yenny. I spent the last not quite as long as you fellows have in the business, just a little over 20 years myself in the corporate buying side, and a few years before that on the retail side. But the bulk of my career is spent in Ohio with an organization called Bueller's. And I left there as the senior director of center store, responsible for all the grocery, dairy, frozen operations, merchandising, promotions, assortment, etc. as well as our warehouse facility. From there, I spent some time with a similar organization, larger scale, called Rouse's, located in Louisiana, with stores in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. Left there as the director of non-foods, general merchandise, health and beauty, confections, and maybe a category or two I left off the top of my head. Non-foods, did I say that? From there, I spent some time in California with a company called Jimbo's, one of the OG initiators of the movement and national, especially organic on the West Coast, located in San Diego, 4 beautiful stores in that area. And very, very well known in the industry for their high standards. To get in their stores, you have to meet the criteria, which is kind of sets the bar in the industry as far as that goes. Left there as the director of grocery. From there, I went to North Carolina and worked for the Fresh Market. 161 stores, 22 states, mostly in the Southeast, a little bit in the Northeast, Midwest. Left there just about a month and a half ago as the vice president of center store and space planning. So overseeing all the operations, merchandising, promotions, etc., for grocery, dairy, frozen, bulk, candy, coffee, and also the space planning team, planograms, space allocation, all that good stuff. So currently looking for my next adventure, which I expect will be coming to a conclusion here in the next month or two. But yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell. I also host my own podcast with Alex Bear called CPG Vibes. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and YouTube. We host it live on LinkedIn and really look after emerging brands and just the consumer packaged goods industry as a whole. So that's the abbreviated version, but I'm sure we can talk more about it as we go through the show. I'm just excited to be here.
Thanks so much.
Great. So Wade, thanks for that background, and you certainly meet a ton of the criteria for the small emerging brands that we talk to as well when they think about, trying to get into retail. Some of them have stars in their eyes, and others are just paralyzed with terror because they just don't even know where to start. So thinking back into your career and all the places that you've helped lead and grow, as a retail buyer, can you talk to us about the importance of both product differentiation and then also whether or not a brand has a really good story, whether it's ingredients or a cause? How do you view that when someone came in and sits down across from you and they're going to talk to you about X?
Sure. So I think the differentiation piece is important. Specifically, my last couple stops, when you look at set sizes in the store as far as how much space any given category has. So if you're presenting me, for example, as a pasta sauce, and I have a 4-foot section of pasta sauce in my stores, I want to know what differentiates you from what I already have on the shelf. What are you going to bring to the category that I'm not already servicing my customers with? Is it an attribute? Is it organic? Is it an add-in? Maybe there's some kind of protein or some kind of thing. Maybe it's pasta sauce probably isn't the best category for this example. Is it regenerative, which is kind of a hot button right now? But what are you bringing to the category that I don't already have? And from a story perspective, I think that's become more and more important over the last, call it 5 years or so, with regards to people in this day and age with TikTok and social media and everything get invested. Consumers do with brands, with stories, and I think if you have a story to tell, whether it's again one of those attributes, if it's a woman-owned business, a minority-owned business, something of that nature that you can kind of latch in and express to your customer base, I think it's important to somehow, some way, be able to tell that story with your marketing, with your packaging, or something of the sort to get that connection, because people are looking for that when they're shopping, and so much of our time as a culture right now is spent with social media. It's something that I see more and more of consumers wanting to be invested, so to speak, not financially, but emotionally invested with products and stories that they feel good about.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you see lots of interesting things out there. So Wade, before I kick this to Tracy, a follow-up there would be this. How do retailers view cause or mission-driven brands? Because as I look at these, sometimes I'm like, man, that's such a great idea. But gosh, in this day and age, it's like someone's always just waiting to like be offended or point out something. I mean, is it mission and causes? Is that something where as a buyer, you're like, look, that's really great. And we might consider you, but we just can't promote your cause because we're not in that business.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think it really depends on the retailer. I know, again, my last couple of stops, we were more in alignment with missions. Looking at my time at Jimbo's, regenerative was very important to us. Sustainability was very important to us. So we were looking to align ourselves with brands that kind of met those missions. And here, most recently, with my time at the Fresh Market, we most certainly looked at minority owned businesses, and we celebrated and promoted with our various materials and off shelf displays in alignment with some of those key holidays that met that, whether it's African American natural history or Asian American, or we oftentimes shouted that out in our marketing materials in our magazine, and then tied in off-shelf placement end caps themed around those promotions. But to your point, I think it really depends. I think if you look more at the conventional side, that is probably where you're going to see more of that reluctance to get behind a cause, because it's larger organizations, they're going to focus their marketing on a more broad scale, wide scale, wide net approach, as opposed to getting behind, because the bigger you get, the harder it is to be everything to everyone. And I think the conventional play is more opt to say, hey, that's not our jam as far as how we go to market and what we do. But I think the smaller niche, natural organic, especially retailers, I think more often than not, you'll find that there are some opportunities to get behind causes and different things like that.
Thank you.
So one of the things I think we talk about a lot, Wade, on our podcast is the buyer cares most about his category, growing his category and incrementality to his category more than about your brand. And I think we also talk about, my baby's beautiful and everybody should love it. And Wade Yenny, when I come to present to him, should as well. So I think that's a great point, and I'm glad that you pointed out that you talked several times about the category, because that's really how you're evaluated and compensated, correct?
Absolutely. Especially as you look at a larger organization that has multiple category managers throughout a given department. So if we look at example for grocery, if you're working for a larger organization, you're going to have someone that's responsible for, different categories, whether it's breakfast, whether it's soup, or so on and so forth. But you're absolutely spot on. Those category managers basically have their own P&L for their given categories. So, you're going to be looking at performance on overall category sales in dollars and units and gross margin, and looking at that year over year and looking for trends as far as to improve year over year performance, and or looking at how the market as a whole is performing. And so if, for example, if there's a given category that in the market is down, how is your market or how is your business performing versus the market? Meaning if the market is down, making a number of 20% in a given category and you're down 10%, maybe that's a win. Whereas if you were looking, if all things were equal and the market was flat, not up year over year, just even, and you're up 5%, again, you're on top of that category and on top of the trends in the market. So I think it's important for brands to know that that's top of mind for category managers and buyers to want to improve units, sales dollars, and net margin in their categories. That's that at the end of the day, that's what they're there for.
Awesome. Great insight. So tell our audience a little bit about how important it is to have traction online before coming to retail. And when you're the buyer, are you looking at reviews, followers, things, the level of content, where the consumers are shopping, if it's on Amazon, like how important is that to you as a buyer?
It, I keep saying it depends on the retailer, but I think it truly does from a standpoint of where you are as a brand and where you are in your journey as far as developing the brand goes. For me, if I'm looking at a smaller retailer, and I'm looking at, maybe one of my goals is to be first to market or close to first to market. So I'm might be more willing to take a chance with a brand that maybe doesn't have that online presence, and maybe I can be the road to success for them, the road to retail, not to steal your verbiage there, but maybe I can be the person that helps them on that journey to get first to market and help them grow the business and expand into other retailers. Whereas if I'm at a larger retailer, more than likely I might be a little bit more want to see a little bit of traction before I give up that real estate. It's easier to take a chance with, you know, 3 or 4 stores versus 100 or 200 stores, where if I'm putting your product on the shelf now, I've widened that risk factor on my end as far as how the product's going to sell. I think it's great to be able to rely on social media and online presence, reviews, etc., with regards to how the product's performing and look at. But at the end of the day, and you said it, I can't remember which one of you said it. It's most important to be able to sell it off the shelf. Getting in the store is easy. That's the easy part. It's getting it out the front door. So if you have an online presence, I still am going to want to hear how you're going to help me and my locations sell that product off the shelf. If you've got an online strategy that works for you, whether it's Amazon, whether it's D2C, direct to consumer, that's great. But how does that translate to brick and mortar, my building and my consumers, and how are you going to use your marketing, various marketing channels to get consumers, drive consumers that are currently buying via one of your online vehicles, get them to buy it at my brick and mortar location.
So I think, Bruce, what he's talking about is our bumper sticker that says it's not about sell in, but it's about sell through.
Exactly. Exactly.
So that's great. That's great insight. So just as an example, so if you're at a smaller retailer, I just want to clarify this. And I come in, I say, well, I have, let's just take, I have 1,000 Instagram followers. And if you're at Jimbo's, you may go, okay, I might take a chance. But if you're a buyer at the fresh market and you only have 1,000 followers, that might be a different story. And you're probably looking for more brands that have 5 or 10 million followers. Would that be a fair assessment?
It could be. I think too. It really depends on the product, Tracy. I mean, it could be. We go back to what we talked about a little bit earlier with regards to what does your brand have that I don't currently have in my assortment. I mean, maybe if I try the product, oftentimes at the fresh market we say taste first. And if the product tastes good, maybe I'm willing to overlook that, the social media presence or lack thereof, and push the product a little bit. But I think it really just boils down to what you're doing that is different for me, that you're going to bring to the category. If you don't have the traction already, if you don't have the example we're using with all these followers, what do you have that you're going to bring to the category? Is it unique? Is it new innovation that just hasn't been seen before? What are you bringing that I can latch onto that potentially my customer is going to latch onto?
Yeah, good point. Good point. So let's talk a little bit about for our audience, especially in the natural channel, what's the best advice you would offer a small emerging challenger brand working with the main 2 distributors in the natural channel, KeHE and UNFI? Because that seems to be
So I think
that's a hot
I think
case.
yeah, it is a hot button, and I think I always, in every single post I make on LinkedIn, I use the hashtag crawl, walk, run. And I think in today's environment with the variable, temperatures, with how difficult it is for brands to get funding and to the capital to help them grow their business, I think it's important for brands to understand the investment that they're going to make to get into a larger retailer. And so parlaying that into UNFI and KeHE, these large distributors, typically you're going to have some kind of distribution or some kind of anchor retailer that is willing to bring in your product before you're going to be able to utilize Unify or KE. And I think before you as a brand commit to that, you have to understand what that commitment looks like financially. Oftentimes, when you're talking about retailers, you're talking about free fills. So free fill is, providing that first case, in some cases more than a case of products free for that placement in the stores. And when you start adding up those dollars when you have, whether it's 100, 200 stores, and you do the math and understand that you're going to provide that first case free, how long it's going to take for you to recoup those dollars. And I think, going back, 10 years or so ago, I think oftentimes success was looked at how many doors you were in. If you could tout that you had 2,000 doors that you had your product on shelf at, and now I think the tables have turned where people are looking more closely at velocity and how things are turning at store level. So I personally, when I'm advising brands and consulting them as far as a strategy, we always talk about being an inch wide and a mile deep, and I'd rather see strong turns and strong velocity at a smaller group of stores than to say you have 1,000 doors, but you don't have product turning in those stores you're in. I think it's important that you win, and build your market slowly. Hence the crawl, walk, run analogy, and show that your product is viable in a smaller market before you get larger. So when you start talking with the potential of doing business with Unify and KE, understanding just totally what that means with regards to financial commitment long term.
Awesome. Yes.
Geez. Wade, my body temperature just dropped like 6 degrees hearing about free fill. Free is a word I just struggle with, but I understand. To your point, that's the way, and I hate the phrase game, but that's the way the game's played.
Yeah.
So, Tracy and I run into people, and I'm sure you have too, that, they think the rules won't apply to them. I'm not paying slotting. Trade spending, no. Okay, come on back another day then when you're ready to play. And I also think one of the things Tracy and I talk about, and we just had a couple of guests talking about the exact same thing you did, but they're on the brand side and you're on the buyer side, yet the intersection around velocity, being in a smaller number of stores and winning or working out the rough spots, that's the victory. It's not getting into 1,000 stores at XYZ and you just can't make hurdle. And then you're having really sad conversations, probably about 6 months in, about, why this isn't working. So let's say someone's coming in, you've given them a meeting, maybe they got a recommendation, and you're going to take a look at what they have. When a brand comes in to meet with you, can you give the folks a flavor of, what should be in that presentation? Like, what are the mandatory elements? And then my follow-up question, just to tip my hand, is how long should this presentation be? I mean, I've made all the mistakes. I've sent people in with the 80-page deck, and that was like almost 80 pages too long. So interested in your perspective, because you're the receiver of these. And one thing we try to make brands understand is, especially when you were maybe a little newer in your career, on a day when you're seeing suppliers, you might see 8 people a day. And you just want to put a knitting needle through your eye by the 4th presentation because it makes no sense. So what's your view on that, Wade?
Sure, and Bruce, I might need you to keep me centered here because there's so much to unpack there, and I might have to mute you because you produced an 80-page deck, and I always use the hashtag ditch the deck because I'm probably the oddball in the buying community because I absolutely hate PowerPoint. I hate pitch decks. I'd rather have conversations like we're talking here today. And I realize that's probably not the approach to take widespread. People want to see data and so on. So we'll get into it a little bit. But I think for me, you have to your pitch deck has to be retailer specific. You have to understand what is important to the retailer that you're approaching, who your target is, and more importantly, before you even reach out to those targets, is that the right consumer base? In other words, I use the example, the fresh market that eliminated the vitamin mineral supplement category some time ago. Yet I still have people reaching out to me trying to pitch items in those categories. So first and foremost, you have to know your retailer and what their area of business looks like. And I say this over and over and over again in this day and age. You literally can see inside a retailer stores via their socials, via Instacart, DoorDash, their circulars. You can basically see their assortment if you put a little bit of elbow grease into it. And I think that's one of the first things I would advise is to make your deck retailer specific. You'd be surprised how many times over the years that I received a copy paste pitch deck with the previous retailer pitch that they made
Oh,
their logo on there. They forgot to change the logo or even the words listed. And I mean, all that tells me, sitting in my side from a category manager buyer side, is like you're just giving me the same presentation that you gave everyone else. And I want to be treated like I'm special as a customer. And I think, so many times I push that back on our brands and tell them, think about, good, bad, or otherwise a car buying experience you had, and why was it that way? And were you made to feel special, or did you go through that whole cookie cutter approach where, well, I need to go talk to my manager and just back and forth. It's just, think about an experience buying something of value that you had and how you felt. And that's kind of flipping the table. So when I'm the category manager buyer, I want to hear your story. I want to know why I should bring your product in. I want to have a rough outline of what retailers you're selling in currently, whether it's online or brick and mortar. I want to know what your plan is to sell product inside my store. So basically a rough outline promotionally of what you're going to bring to the table, as far as to help move product. Um, I want to know what your average, your suggested retail price is. I want to know what your promoted retail, what that mindset is. And that's really the key points for me. I want to know what you're bringing to the table. We've talked about this already several times. Is what's different about your product? Why should I bring it in? All those things to me are the key essentials as far as when you're pitching. But I can't stress enough from my perspective how important it is to treat each presentation as a unique interaction, as opposed to the way you pitched retailer A is the way you pitch to retailer B, C, D tomorrow. You should have some unique twists and turns relative to that retailer to show that you've done your homework and that you're just not doing the same pitch that you do for everyone, because each retailer is in fact does have unique qualities that they do. So
Yeah, no, those are fantastic points. We've had some prior guests talk about really making sure, for instance, that the demographics of your brand match the retailer. Just because, say, Dollar General will give you a meeting and you're a high-end skincare brand, probably not a good match. So, we try to say politely, hey, Wade, buyers are supposed to give meetings. That's their job. But, having them accept is different. One other thing before I turn it back to Tracy, can you talk just for a second about the success metrics of the various places you've seen? So let me go a little deeper there. It's amazing to us that we've heard from other buyers and even brand founders that they'll go in and, let's just use Fresh Market, and Wade Yenny's going to give them a shot, but they don't ever ask, like, well, what's the success criteria? What's the velocity I have to hit? What's my, so when you're going through this, if they haven't had the foresight to address these questions up front, but you're trying to help them out and be a good guy, do you tell them what the velocity hurdle is going to have to be and by when? And, do you give them the 3 or 4 guiding lights that they need to be sailing toward?
yeah, and I'll answer that. I want to touch on something you just said prior before I hit that, and that's talking about it's your job to take meetings and things like that. That's something else that I always advise brands on, is understanding that a category manager slash buyer wears so many hats. They aren't simply doing meetings. They're doing paperwork. They're responsible for the P&L in their categories. They're doing promotions. They're doing off-shelf display plans. They're meeting internal meetings. There's so much that they do during the course of the day. Believe me, if all they had to do was just listen to pitches and say yes or no, you have a lot different environment out there. The reason so many times you have a hard time getting responses from these people is because they are wearing so many different hats. So I always make sure that brands understand, and being a little bit sympathetic and with the understanding that, hey, I'm not just talking to you. I've got 10 other brands I need to talk to today. Oh, and I have to write an ad, and oh, I have to meet with our marketing team, and so on and so forth. So I wanted to make sure we talk about that. But beyond that, as far as giving them guiding lights and things like that, I think for me, to answer your question, I would say yes, I would help them, guide them in that direction. But I think going back to that pitch deck, going back with that original that first meeting, I, as a salesperson, should be asking my target, my retailer, my category manager, buyer, what areas of, what can I invest in, or how can I be successful here? What are the marketing opportunities for me to be successful here? Is it I referenced a magazine? Is it emails? Is it off-shelf displays? Is it demos and sampling? And again, looking at that target retailer specific, I should be asking as a salesperson, how can I be successful in your stores? What can I do to help ensure that success in your stores? But uh, if that doesn't come up, I'm certainly going to help guide from a standpoint of saying what I just said. Hey, at this location or this retailer, we utilize our magazine, and that's what you want to put your dollars in to help grow the business. Velocities are interesting and can vary based on category and retailer. I like to use the example of the yogurt category because it's such high turns and fast turning that the velocities that I expect from that category are completely different than what I would expect, for example, out of the dry spice category. Not as many turns, not as much frequency of use. So people eat yogurt every day. They put spices on and use a little bit here and there. So the turns and velocities that I expect in that category are going to be different than that yogurt category. So again, there's just not a simple copy paste, 3 units a week, a case a week for every single item in the store. So I think it's a two-way street. You just, as a salesperson, you should be asking those questions. What's going to make me successful? And on the buying side, the category manager side, if you're not getting asked those questions, you certainly want to help guide them, especially before you put them on the shelf. Because at the end of the day, let's not overcomplicate it. We just want to sell more stuff. It doesn't matter what it is. We're selling groceries. It's not really rocket science here. We should be working together to make that happen.
We're not trying to cure cancer. We're just trying to sell groceries.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk about consumer demand. We've talked about velocity. So tell us a little bit about the consumer demand tactics that maybe you've seen from a brand and what makes them successful, and what types of things have you seen throughout your career that you're like, that was a great idea.
As far as marketing to drive velocity, is that what you're okay? Yeah. So I think I look at some of the examples out there, and some of the people that are doing things differently. I would throw out Liquid Death with some of the stuff they've done. Marketing I think is just absolutely brilliant. Just being completely different, off the wall. Their commercials draw attention. I think going back to the retailer specifics, I think more and more you're seeing on brand socials. LinkedIn is interesting because I personally and professionally have benefited greatly from LinkedIn. But I don't know that your average consumer is using LinkedIn. So you see oftentimes brands and people in the industry using LinkedIn for announcing, which is great for the industry people. Hey, we have a new placement in Sprouts, we have a new placement in Whole Foods, we have a new wherever it may be. But for the general consumer, obviously, they're not going to LinkedIn for that information. At least I don't think so. So I've seen some of the good things I've seen are those announcements and those wins and unique things that I've seen done on brand socials. The one that I always like to use is and our personal friends of mine are the folks at Midday Squares. Some of the things they've done with their socials when they've gotten a new placement and a new retailer. I think back, I want to say it was Sprouts. They did this like unique commercial with a stampede, and there's all these people running to Sprouts to get midday squares. And so utilizing your socials, we go back to what you talked about earlier with regards to the followers on the various social outlets. How are you using your outlets as a brand to shout to the retailer that you've gotten placement at? And I think, again, it goes back to that partnership to um, also understanding what the customer base at your given retailer, what socials are important to them. Like, for example, going back to my Ohio days, we utilized Facebook more than we utilized Instagram. So I think I would want to target that Facebook approach to customers on that channel versus looking at the fresh market. They utilize Instagram a little bit more. So again, if a retailer has 1,000 followers on Facebook, but they have 100,000 on Instagram, probably where you want to put your time and money into as far as Instagram, where if it's vice versa, or throw in TikTok or another, looking at where that retailer's consumer base plays and going after that avenue as far as approach.
Awesome.
So Wade, you just gave a bunch of really great examples and named a few brands that have done unique and interesting things to drive demand. So I want to twist this next question a little bit, because I think you just covered what was on my mind. So as a buyer, you have a new emerging or challenger brand come to you. How do you feel about the person representing themselves, or should they think outside, I don't know about outside the box, but sometimes as an entrepreneur, this is outside the box, hiring a broker or a sales agent that really specializes. I'm just going to stay with Fresh Market because they're up the street and they're always packed here. So that's easy for me to remember. What counsel would you give these brands? Because we've had people say, look, sales is a profession. Not anyone can do it. And Tracy and I have had to tell more than a couple of people, why would you rather fail for free than hire someone who actually knows what they're doing?
Yeah, that's a very good point, or very good question, or topic. I think the recurring theme of the show here is it's retailer specific, and so I keep going down that road. But so many specific retailers have established relationships with brokers, and they may not require brokers. Um, in some cases, they may, but they might encourage them. Whereas other retailers, and using your fresh market example, might be more open to talking directly with a brand or a founder. They don't need a introductory, a medium to introduce the two. In other words, they don't need that broker, that third party to work on their behalf. I think probably the more important part is who is representing your brand for on the sales team or in the sales aspect, and are they good at it? In other words, you said it yourself. Not everyone's good at sales, and I've had people over the years, literally, who, going back to the deck topic and whatnot, who literally have read me verbatim, word for word, a pitch
Oh,
deck.
ouch.
Ugh.
Probably not the person that you want representing your brand and trying to get your sales, right? I mean, obviously, if they can't speak passionately, intelligently educated about the product they're trying to sell, probably not the person you want, right? And that's not a fault on people. That's just, there's some people naturally that just aren't good, whether it's public speaking, whether it's conversationally. They might be more better on the supply chain side or something, behind the scenes, IT, whatever it may be. But you want the person, oftentimes, that initial sales meeting we're talking about, oftentimes that's going to be the first interaction face to face, whether it's Zoom or in person, that the category manager has with the brand. And if the person can't put your brand's best foot forward, you probably need to look at, is it a different person on the team, or maybe I do need to use a broker because we don't have uh, qualified might not be the right word, but we don't have a person that's good to make that pitch on our behalf. We need to work it through and have someone do it that either is experienced or just as a good BSer, right? As far as conversationally can talk the talk versus that example I gave you of someone reading a pitch deck verbatim. I think that's important.
And that's painful for you as a buyer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Wade, one more follow-up question here. So either when you're in a buying role or in a supervisor role overseeing a team of buyers, what is the best way an emerging brand can actually get inside your building? Is it a reference from someone you've worked with in the past that you trust? Is it a broker with a good relationship with Fresh Market? Is it someone you're tracking at one of your competitive retailers, someone you meet at a trade show, all of the above, none of the above? How do people even get to your desk or on your
Well,
Zoom?
yeah, and I was going to say it's good. We want to make differentiate or at least acknowledge the fact that many times not just the Fresh Market everywhere. Those meetings, which 10 years ago were all in person, are more than likely going to be Zoom calls or Microsoft Teams or something like that. I think the industry has changed so much. The in-person frequency is a lot less than it used to be. But I think it's being I like to use this from a buddy of mine, Matt Cotton, being pleasantly persistent. As far as your reach out, trying to get the information as far as who are you contacting. And there's ways if you go to the various websites, typically most retailers have some kind of, whether it's a form to fill out or contact us or vendors inquiry or something like that. I think that's always a good avenue to look. And there's resources out there, on the various sites that have category review calendars for the various retailers that will help guide you. And typically those resources are free. They're out there. They're published. I mean, the Fresh Market, for example, they have a generic mailing list of people that have reached out, and they just compile that list. And when they have a category review or some kind of communication with pertains to merchandising, they're going to send an email out letting the community know, hey, we're evaluating this category. Here's the information. So you want to get on those lists if that's the avenue. You want to get on the websites and look to see if it's a vendor portal, or sometimes some of the larger retailers even have their category reviews published online for you to look at. Hey, this month, this is what we're looking at, or this is the schedule for the entire calendar year. So um, doing a little bit of homework. And I think, especially with the community we're talking about, the natural organic, specialty community, brands really are, it really is a community. It's not cutthroat, at least not as much as the conventional side. And I think there's no harm in reaching out to a friendly brand in a space, in whether it's your category or someone that that already has placement in the store. Say, hey, I want to work with, we keep using the Fresh Market example, but I want to work with the Fresh Market. What's the best way to contact them? And I think you'd be surprised how many times a brand that already is in that would be willing to share that information with you, or at least help you in that journey, because excuse me, it's such a giving community. And I think that's one of the reasons I like the space so much.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. So tell us a little bit, maybe, you don't have to name names, but what's the biggest mistake you've seen a small emerging brand make?
Going too big too fast. The worst mistake, we talked about, the easy, my opinion, the easy win is getting on the shelf. But we go back to the financial commitment to get on the shelf at a call it larger retail. We talked about slotting and free fills, but thinking beyond that, the financial impact of that, are you truly ready to, you've sent that first case to 200 stores. What about reorders? If the product, let's say all things aligned, the marketing, everything you've done is going to fire. And what happens if, are you ready from a supply chain standpoint to ship reorders? It's my worst nightmare as a category manager buyer to put a product on the shelf, it succeeds, but then I can't reorder it because they can't supply it fast enough. So again, I go back to that crawl, walk, run mentality. Um, be careful what you ask for. If you get placement at a 200 store, 400 store chain, but then you can't fulfill those POs, you've created a big problem, because the likelihood of a category manager or buyer giving you a lot of latitude in that regard, probably not very likely. It's probably not very likely. Very unforgiving, because dead space doesn't sell. Empty space on the shelves holes on the shelves. It's something that store personnel, from an operational standpoint, are graded on as far as in stock. It's something our distributor partners are graded on as far as their service levels. And it's something that, in a kind of twisted way, the category managers and buyers are rated on based on sales, and if you can't sell it if you don't have it. So I think that's the absolute worst mistake, is going too big too fast and not being prepared for the potential success or loss of that gained distribution.
Bruce, what's our bumper sticker on that one?
I was wondering if you were going there or me. So Wade, one of the things we always say is the only thing a retailer hates more than a product that doesn't sell is one that doesn't ship. So
Yep.
one quick follow up here. We've had a couple of other buyers on the show, and one of the things that, well, two kisses of death that they pointed out. So I'd just like to validate with you and get your opinion. One, they said, I've accepted products that then can't get set up in the system. And the example this person gave was that's when you might want to hire a broker who actually knows how to fill those forms out and doesn't look at it like it's written in Martian. And then the other thing one of the buyers said was, if I constantly hear my team is working with the same small new vendor, I don't need needy suppliers.
Don't need new suppliers. I'm not sure I understand that last one.
It
As far
means
as
that Bruce is always calling Wade's admin, asking questions because I'm helpless.
Got it. I got it. Yes, again, it goes back to, I always talk about, you talk about the road to retail. I talk about being retail ready, and I use the analogy of going from a farmer's market mentality, or someone that's, I always said this in Ohio, and it was exaggeration, but probably not that much so. Everybody and their mother was making barbecue sauce, salsa, and spaghetti sauce in their bathtubs. I mean, it's just those categories were just seemingly everybody was doing something. And going back, I think Tracy mentioned the baby. No one likes being told their baby's ugly, and so on and so forth. But I say that all jokingly, from going from a standpoint of selling to neighbors, friends, and people on a Saturday for 2 hours at a farmer's market, and telling you that your product's good and it's awesome and you should go sell it at Sprouts or Whole Foods, to the reality of making that happen, and how difficult that really is. So, going back to what you said, if you're approaching me, and I'm a larger retailer, I'm I'm going to push back, and probably during that the vetting process, that first meeting process, when you're making your pitch, I'm going to ask some questions, and it's probably going to be pretty evident pretty quickly whether or not you're ready for the magnitude that you're asking for. And I've been in a situation where and I like to say the squeaky wheel gets the grease, as far as asking for things and things, but what you don't want to be is needy, where you're dependent on, or really pushing the envelope. The example you gave of pushing my assistant or someone on my team over and over. What about this? What about this? What about this? It's not a good look. Limited resources. I go back to, we wear so many hats in this side of the business. If I can make a choice of doing business with this brand that has their act together, they understand the commitment they're making to get in 200 stores, and they're ready to go, versus this one that is just coming out of the farmer's market and needs a lot of coaching. Probably going to lean this way, unless your product just completely overshadows this one, because I don't have the resources, the time, or the energy to put into your business. I mean, unless you're going to pay me to do that, which I don't think that's realistic, right? I mean, that's my perspective.
Yeah. So Wade, in all your experience at several different retailers, one of the things Tracy and I are always interested in hearing directly is, when you decide to take on a new item, test or full chain, if you're at a smaller place, how long do you wait once it's first ship date and it's cut in, before you start getting worried about a brand performance? And then once you're worried, what actions do you take?
Hmm. That's a really, really interesting question, and a good one. I think, I'm probably a little bit more hands-on with that than a lot of buyers are, depending on their bandwidth and what they're able to do. I mean, I have such a passion for brands and new items and things like that, that it was top of mind for me to look and see how things were performing once we've done a reset, and to see kind of where those velocities aren't. And I think from a brand perspective, I'm going to make a point of it. If I'm the salesperson, the person responsible for that relationship on the brand side, I'm going to be reaching out 2 weeks after placement, a month after placement, just to see how things are going, to make sure I have visibility and understanding of how things are going, and to make sure things went without a hitch. From a buying perspective, I think it goes back to that bandwidth standpoint of where, can I as a category manager buyer watch every velocity on every item that's coming in once I've done a reset. And it's probably a little bit of a tall ask. So um, I would think minimally from a category manager buyer perspective, you want to evaluate 30 days after the reset, and then maybe 60 days. And then if you're seeing things that are alarming, you're setting up something to have that conversation to write the course of action, whether it's another promotion, whether it's reevaluating the price point, placement, where it's at on the shelf, where there's supply issues. I think you have to hit that early, because the the longer you wait, the more likely it is that you're going to be discontinued. It's just the nature of the beast. We on this side of the desk don't have the luxury of giving you a lot of rope to hang yourself with regards to succeeding or not succeeding. The space is too important. Our financials are too important to us, that we're just not going to give you a long leash as far as that goes. So I think I don't know that I answered the question, but I think you point your fingers both ways. For me, I'm going to be proactive in that, because I want the items to perform and I want the brands to succeed. But I also would encourage brands to be aggressive on that other side, to get visibility to movement and velocities, and make sure you're doing what you probably do before you get to point of discontinuation. Because when once you're too far gone, it's too late.
Well, those are great answers and counsel, because again, people that are not CPG veterans, Tracy and I have had people say, well, I'm again staying with the fresh market. Well, I'm in fresh market, so I'm good for a year. No,
No.
there's no guarantees. Tracy?
Right.
Yeah, so last topic we're going to talk about, tell us about who's been the greatest influence on your career.
Hmm. You guys trying to get me teared up or something on here. I would point to two individuals. One was my mentor in Ohio, who's no longer with us, unfortunately, but his name was Harry Graham. He was a old school grocery guy. And I like to see it as the evolution of the business. If I put myself back when I started in this business, or this side of the desk 20 years ago, I came up under Harry's wing. Old school. It was price, 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 price. I'm beating the guys up as far as I want me, 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 me. I want the lowest price. Don't really care about your profitability. And coming directly out of our stores and into the corporate office buying environment, his tutelage, his patience, his guidance was just instrumental in my development. And then also as I progressed and moved up throughout over the years, it also led me down the road, I think, where I'm at today. Whereas I am a little bit more lenient. I'm a kinder, gentler soul, so to speak. I think if you talk to someone that did business with me 20 years ago versus someone that did business with me the last 5, they could attest to that, as far as the evolution there. But Harry was absolutely top of the list as far as that goes. The other one that I like to point out, who I'm still in contact with this day, was our president at Rouse's, Steve Black. He has a storied career he's been with Rouse's, Lucky's, Sprouts. He's been kind of all over the place. But I wear a bracelet to this day that I got the first day I got to Rouse's, and Steve is semi-retired now. And does some consulting and speaking, and wrote a book called The 5 Rules, and that's what this bracelet is. So Steve's 5 rules are: do your job, be kind, no surprises, no drama, protect the brand. And it's something that to this day resonates with me. And here I am at this point, 4 years removed, leaving Rouse's, where I still wear this bracelet and keep in contact with Steve semi regularly, because he had such an impact on me as far as leadership and just an overall outlook of what it takes to be in a position like that.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that. Bruce?
Well, let me go cover off and thank our sponsor before we wrap up with Wade and thank him for his time. So once again, folks, we want to thank our sponsor, Media Manager Marketplace. Please reach out to them to find out how they can make offline channels like radio and television help your product really move off the shelves. The earlier you bring that kind of powerful mass marketing into play to help create awareness and demand for your product, the more likely you are to see retail accounts stick and grow. So don't wait. You don't want Wade Yenny calling you that there's a problem. So contact their president, Buck Robinson, directly. Buck will personally review your product and offer his free assessment. Email him directly at buck@themediamgr.com. That's Buck, like a dollar bill, and he will stretch that baby for you at themediamanagermgr.com. Thanks a lot. Tracy, how do people get in touch with Wade and then the big finish?
Absolutely. So Wade, thanks so much, first of all, for being on the podcast today. Great insight. This is going to be an awesome episode for small emerging brands to listen to. But how can folks get a hold of you?
I think the easiest way, first of all, thanks again for having me, Bruce, Tracy. I enjoyed the conversation, the questions, and just the general discussion. Easiest way to get a hold of me is on LinkedIn. I'm very present there. Do my best to keep up with direct messages. Sometimes I get a little bit behind, but for the most part, I'm pretty responsive there, and will guide you to my email if it makes sense. If there's a additional conversation that needs to take place. Also encourage people to tune in to the podcast that I do, CPG Vibes. We do it live on LinkedIn, which is kind of unique. It's kind of you mentioned, podcasts that are edited and things like that. We do it live, and it's out there. And what's unique about it beyond that is we take audience comments and questions during the episode. It's posted there. So oftentimes we have buyers, brands, brokers, people interacting back and forth with questions, needs, different things, whether they're addressed to, myself and my co-host Alex, or just for someone else in the community. So it's really interactive, really community oriented, and I would say just one of those two ways is the best way to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Well, we so appreciate you being on today, Wade, and thank you again. And audience, please follow us on our iTunes, Spotify channels, or on our LinkedIn page under Road, the number 2 Retail. Thanks again, guys, and be careful out there.
Good luck out there, folks.